I would like to introduce our next speaker, Chelsie DeRoche, ergonomist of our Ottawa clinic. Chelsie?
Thank you, Trevor. Hi, everyone. Hi. Today I'll be discussing the implications of sit-stand workstations. I know that most of our ergonomists have been getting a lot of inquiries and a lot of requests for information on sit-stand workstations. And that's the case because it's been a hot topic in the media. Take a look at this. Oops. It's hard to see here, but it says, "Is sitting the new smoking? There's no running away from it. The more you sit, the poorer your health, and the sooner you may die, no matter how fit you are." Sitting is killing you. And there's a picture of a monster hunched over an office worker. How sitting wrecks your body. And there's a Grim Reaper standing behind an office worker. And even newspapers are making reference to this. The Globe and Mail said, "Sitting is the new smoking and it's time to quit." CBC News, "Sitting for too long can kill you, even if you exercise." And CNN said, "Sitting will kill you, even if you exercise." So these quotes are very often questioned in the world of ergonomics. And today I just want to set it straight. According to Statistics Canada, individuals spend 9 hours and 43 minutes per day in a sitting position. And again, Statistics Canada said that 69% of days are spent being sedentary. This is in part due to a lot of jobs requiring computers for daily work. And Stamatakis in 2013 said that a standing and walking occupation was associated with lower risks of all-cause deaths and cancer mortalities compared to sitting occupations. But even with this revelation, stipulating that sitting can or will kill you is definitely a far leap. Sedentary lifestyles have long been associated with negative health outcomes, but sitting itself, just the action of sitting, is not a life-threatening action. And the reality is, and what I want you to retain from today's presentation, is that moderation is really important. I would never want you to sit all day long, but I also wouldn't advise you to stand all day long. We see a lot of nurses and other people who stand all day experience plantar fasciitis, varicose veins, lower back pains, knee and hip pains. So postural variety is really key. There's no single ideal working posture. So we want you to shift the load from one tissue to another, and this is really effective to reduce the risk of tissue overload. Individuals are really trying to reduce their sedentary behaviors and sedentary times at work. And they do so in many ways, by developing fitness programs, by walking during lunches or breaks, by promoting stair use, developing workplace-based physical activity programs, by stretching or doing resistance training at the workstation, and of course, by introducing sit-stand workstations. How many of you do at least one of these? Okay. Do any of you do all 6? Oh, we have someone in the back, Cheryl. Hopefully people at home have their hands up too. There are benefits, potential benefits to sit-stand workstation according to research. Field studies and experimental research have demonstrated that sit-stand workstations have the potential to reduce musculoskeletal complaints in the workplace and even lead to a healthier lifestyle. Specifically, back pain and discomfort are significantly reduced when comparing sit-only workstations to sit-stand workstations. You may know that the pressure on the back is less when you are in a standing position, and you can see that with the chart that I've posted on the slide here. So you can see that in a 70-kilogram individual, when they're standing, the pressure on their lumbar spine is about 100 kilograms. And when they're sitting, it's about 150 kilograms. And sit-stand workstations can also decrease the slumped posture. You see in the first picture there that when individuals don't have adequate lumbar support on their chair, they tend to adopt kind of like a C-curved spine, whereas we like to see the nice S-shaped. And even during our assessments, we see that people are slouched on their chair. and they say that it feels great. And that's because it actually reduces the postural demands upon your torso musculature, but it does so at the expense of elevated mechanical stress upon the back. And in the chart, you can actually see the two last bars at the end. You see how much weight is placed on the back when you slouch in a seated position. And it's between about 200 kilograms to 300 kilograms, so quite substantial. Sit-stand workstations can also lead to productivity improvements. According to a Washington State University, they saw median productivity increases of about 12% following the introduction of a sit-stand workstation. Gifford saw similar results, seeing a productivity increase of about 10%. And they say that it actually increases the energy levels in the workplace, and it promotes the sharing of ideas. You're already standing. You might as well go to your colleague's office and share some ideas and discuss different concepts. Sit-stand workstations also have the potential to lead to vascular benefits. Physiologically, prolonged static seated computer work negatively influences the oxygen saturation and blood flow. And when you're sitting, it's actually more difficult for the blood vessels to pump the blood to the capillaries as a result of increased resistance induced by the soft tissue deformation. Sitting can also lead to edema, which is swelling, and this can produce a sense of cold, numbness, and discomfort. And in the long term, it can lead to circulatory disorders such as varicose veins. But as I mentioned, varicose veins also occurs in people who stand too long. So again, just the importance of postural variety and of moderation. And when you're sitting, there's actually a pressure in the popliteal fold, right at the back of your leg here, especially if your chair is too deep. So there's a lot of nerves and blood vessels that course the lower leg, and when there's constant pressure being placed there, it really restricts the blood flow. Now, the challenge that we have as ergonomists with sit-stand workstations is that there are so many different types, so many different variations on the market. And I want to make sure that you're able to select the proper sit-stand workstations for your needs. So I'll be talking about some of the ones that we see very commonly, in addition to the benefits and the risks associated with each of them. So first we have the desk surface system. It's basically a device. You put it right on top of your existing desk, and you're able to lift it up during the standing position. I tried to sketch a drawing, but clearly my graphic skills aren't the greatest. Have any of you seen this workstation or know what I'm talking about? Okay, good. I'm seeing a lot of nods. So the benefits of this is that they're cost effective. They range from about $300 to $800. And they do fit in small spaces and on virtually any work surface. However, there are quite significant risks. The first is the awkward posture required to lift the sit-stand workstation. So what you would have to do is hunch over, click buttons, and then lift it up. And sometimes it actually slides on the desk, so you have to brace it with your hip and actually lift it up. And of course, there's force required with lifting the device, so that's another risk factor. And I think the biggest concern that we have with this is that in the seated position, the keyboard is above desk height. Can anyone tell me why that's a problem? Chair doesn't go high enough, okay. Not quite, but you're getting there. Yes. Partly yes. So imagine that this keyboard here, it would be sitting at this position. This is 75 centimeters, the typical height of a desk. I'm 5'2". So if I'm placing my chair, am I in a 90-degree angle? Am I sitting properly? Yes. So imagine I'm sitting on my desk and I'm using my device here. What's happening? That's right. I don't have a 90-degree angle in my elbow, and that's recommended anytime you're standing or sitting. So if we take a look at anthropometrics here, and remember, to have a 90-degree angle in the elbow, the keyboard would have to be the same height as the elbow height, right? So the average desk height, about 75 centimeters. Let's assume that's the case. On average, men have a seated elbow height of 68.8 centimeters and women of 64.3. This means that the desk surface system would be too high for at least 50% of the population. And we can go as far as to look at the 95th percentile of females. They have a seated elbow height of 72.1. So now we can actually say that the desk surface system is too high for 95% of females and at least 50% of males. Does that make sense? Okay. Next is the desk mount system. This is actually modeled by Ergotron. We see this one a lot. Technical difficulties. There you go. So the desk mount workstations are definitely cost effective. They range from about $400 to $1,200 depending on the model. They're easy to maneuver. It's just a matter of sliding it up and down. And again, these do fit in small spaces and on pretty well any workstation. And it does allow the keyboard to sit below the desk height because of this little mechanism right over here. So it allows the keyboard to rest below desk height. The downfall is that you do have to readjust it every time. You have to make sure you're looking at your elbow height and your eye height, and you have to adjust it accordingly. The keyboard is also too high for some individuals, like myself. I'm 5'2". You can't actually make this piece longer. So sometimes it does cause the keyboard to be too high for some people. And you also can't adjust the distance of the monitor. So from the user to the monitor, you can't adjust that. So people who are taller or people who use dual monitors do find that the screens are sometimes a little bit too close, and that's not something that we have any control over. It also doesn't permit a height adjustable work surface. Some of them have a plateau right here, but still doesn't allow for much room for paperwork. So if you're the type of person who does a lot of work on your desk, signing papers or writing reports by hand, then this workstation definitely wouldn't be ideal for you. Now finally, we're going to be talking about fully height adjustable workstations, such as the model I have here from Ergocentric. They come in a lot of different shapes, a lot of different sizes, but I would say that these three shapes are the most common, the most typical ones that we see. The straight desk, it just doesn't allow that much room for paperwork. So again, if you're the type of person who does a lot of paperwork, it might not be the best option. By the time you put your phone and your computer, your keyboard, your pens, your pencils, there's just not that much room. The corner desk, like this. It's great, but there is a little bit of wasted space in this general area here. You wouldn't be able to put much here. So we prefer just the standard L-shaped workstation. With the L-shaped workstation, you can put your computer on one side and then completely twist your chair over to perform paperwork on the other side. Some of them have cranks. This one's nice electric. You can actually see it goes up and down. But some of them have cranks. They're a little bit more cost effective. They're a little bit difficult to lift, especially if you have a lot of equipment on the desk. And of course, when more effort is needed, you're less likely to change positions. So that's definitely the risk associated with the crank workstation. There's also workstations with a lever. Again, quite easy to use, but there is some force required to actually lift it up, especially if you've got a lot of equipment, dual monitors, anything as such. And if you want the L-shaped, we've always said not to get the lever because then it becomes a lot heavier. This is actually my workstation at my Ottawa office. So we have a workstation similar to this one. It is an L shape. And the first picture is the seated position and then the standing position. So this just permits the entire work surface to be adjusted. And I would say that it is ergonomically the best option. The downfall, of course, is the price. They're a little bit more expensive than the other options I demonstrated. And another thing that you really have to look for is whether it comes with extended range. Some aren't available with extended range, and oftentimes they're not purchased with extended range. And if it doesn't have extended range, it's 70 centimeters high. So again, if we look at anthropometrics, if the workstation is 70 centimeters high at the absolute lowest, it wouldn't fit 50% of men, and it wouldn't fit at least 50% of women. So definitely something to keep into consideration. You have to buy workstations for most individuals with the extended range. This one actually has it. And you can see it goes really low. This is the lowest setting. So this one does have the extended range. So I just want to just give you a little bit of information about how to set up sit-stand workstations. Of course, as I mentioned, we want a nice 90-degree angle in the elbow. And that's the case whether you're standing or whether you're sitting. So you can see here, same type of scenario with the elbow angle. We always want you to get a wrist rest, whether you're standing or sitting again. And it really helps promote neutral positions in your wrist. What happens when you don't have it is that you end up having a positive angle. We call that wrist extension. And with the wrist rest, it just permits your wrist to become more flat and more neutral. The screen height, we want the top of the screen to be aligned with seated eye height. It should be at least an arm's length away from you and directly in front of you. So we want you to avoid having the monitor too low. This causes neck flexion, as you can see in figure A. When the monitor is too high, it causes neck extension, as seen in figure B. And we also don't want you to put the monitor off to the side because it causes you to twist your neck and sometimes even your body, deviating your posture from neutral. So this is a summary, and I hope you guys look at it real carefully because I'm giving you all a quiz. It's my favorite part of the presentation. Okay, what's the problem here? This is actually Todd. He's our ergonomist at the Ottawa location. Yes. Yes? Yes, exactly. So the desk is actually too high, and you can see there's stress placed on the shoulders. They're raised a little bit. He doesn't look comfortable. This is Tracy, our occupational health nurse. She's going to be really happy that 526 people saw her picture today. What's going on here? Monitor's too low. Yeah, this one's a little bit easy. Okay. I'm hearing a lot of things. Definitely monitor's too low. Desk is too low. Anything else? That's right. You guys are good. So the monitor's definitely too low. There is some strain placed on the wrist. As you can see, she does have the wrist rest, but she's not using it. And because the desk is so low, there is strain there. And of course, there's no 90-degree angle on the elbows. What's going on here? Monitor's too low. The keyboard's too low, someone said? Yes. Anything else? Yes, absolutely. No, Trevor, you're not allowed to answer. Okay, this is a little bit of a challenge for you guys, and it's hard to see, so I'll let you guys pass anyways. But did you see my shoes? I'm actually wearing the same shoes I'm wearing today in the picture. I would never want you to stand or use a sit-stand workstation while you're wearing a 4-inch heel. That's a huge problem. So keep that in mind. Your footwear is really important if you're going to be standing for a certain portion of the day. Now, I have 2 cases, and I want you to tell me which sit-stand workstation is best for each case. So case 1, we have a medical secretary. She's 5'2", and she performs a lot of paperwork. Which option is best for her? Yes, so the fully height-adjustable sit-stand workstation, as we see here. Case 2, we have an individual of average height. She works in a cubicle with very limited space, and paperwork is not often performed. It would be the desk mount, as we've seen in the second option here. So these are the answers. You guys did well, so I'm happy about that. I just want to talk to you about a few other things. First, footrests. As you saw in this little summary picture, we want you to put the footrest under the desk so that you can use it in the standing position. Don't use it while you're in the seated position. We just want to make sure that your chair is set up accordingly rather than having to use the footrest. But we want you to vary your position, right? Postural variety. And this just helps to reduce the opportunity for static posture. So it shifts your balance. You want one leg to rest on the footrest while the other supports your body, and then change it up. Anti-fatigue mat, as somebody mentioned as well, they're very important. They come in a lot of different shapes, a lot of different sizes, but because most buildings have a concrete base, it's really, really important to have the anti-fatigue mat. There is evidence that very soft or very thick mats actually increase a worker's fatigue and leg and back fatigue. So thicker and softer is not always better when it comes to the anti-fatigue mats. And you also don't want to confuse them with anti-slip mats. It's completely different. They're not anti-fatigue, and anti-fatigue mats are still designed so that they don't slide on the floor. But you want something relatively light because you do need to slide it when your chair is rolling around, when you're in the seated position. So something small, about this size, that you can easily push over when you're seated. Footwear, as I mentioned, very important. You don't want shoes that will, you want shoes that won't change the shape of your foot, and you want them to have a firm grip on your heel, but allow some freedom of movement in your toes. Your feet should not slip inside your shoes. That causes instability, and it can lead to soreness and fatigue in the feet. Shoes with laces allow you to have more control on how your shoe fits, so that's another thing you want to consider. You want to have arch support, of course, and you want a small heel, about 1/4 of an inch. You don't want to wear a flat, but you also don't want to wear heels that are higher than 2 inches. That's definitely not recommended and contraindicated. Some people choose to wear orthotics, and this is another option, especially if you're standing for prolonged periods. It can help to improve your posture. It can relieve joint stress. It can support ligaments and even treat different foot-related ailments like overpronation and heel and forefoot pain. They do, however, change the shape of your shoe, right? When you add more padding in there, there's less room in your shoe for your actual foot. So something to keep in mind, orthotics can't fit in every shoe, and sometimes you are required to purchase the footwear that goes along with the orthotic. Sit-stand ratios. Dr. Callahan, he's actually a kinesiology professor at the University of Waterloo and the Canada Research Chair for Spine Biomechanics and the director of CREA-MSD. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to sit-stand workstations. And he actually recommends a sit-stand ratio of 1:1 all the way up to 1:3. So this means that users should stand for about 30 to 45 minutes every hour. And you can use timers and alarms to help achieve this. And you really do want to motivate your colleagues. I know that in Ottawa, anytime we see each other stand, we definitely have a mini celebration. So yeah, motivate your colleagues. It's always better. That is it for my presentation today. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Hello? For somebody who's sitting on an elevated chair to a sit stand, would you recommend an elevated footrest for them so that their legs aren't just dangling in space?
Yeah, we would always want you to use a chair that is right for you before even using a footrest, right? So this is an example here. You want your feet to be very flat on the ground, and you want your knees to be in a 90-degree angle. So you want to make sure you're achieving that first and foremost. Now, if you have to use an elevated chair, then absolutely you would want some type of foot support. You would never want your feet to dangle. And if they do, then you're just increasing the pressure point at the popliteal fold, as I mentioned, and that really restricts blood flow. So absolutely, you want foot support, but you want first to make sure that your chair fits you properly.
Your footwear would greatly change the fit of that chair.
Yes, absolutely. And we do mention this every time we do an office ergonomics assessment. You want to consider the footwear. And if someone does wear heels and they're in the seated position all day, that's the first thing we ask is this your regular footwear? Most of the time they say no, so we ask them to take off their shoes so that we can do the assessment. But sometimes it is the case where people wear heels all day, so you definitely want to consider that. But the guideline's always 90 degrees, right? So look at the seam of your pant and try to get a 90-degree angle there. That's the best way.
We have feedback from online if we can't hear the question, so please flag me on
Steve, he's going to challenge me today. I'm nervous already.
Hello, everyone online. So I'm going to challenge you, Chelsie.
Okay.
I've been to lots of workplaces, and one of the first questions is, an ergonomist. I'm going to ask about sit-stand workstations. Everyone's asking for them now. Do you think everyone should have a sit-stand workstation, or when should they be implemented?
That's a good question. Do I think everybody needs a sit-stand workstation? Absolutely not, especially if there's budget constraints. But I do think that there are a lot of benefits associated with sit-stand workstations. So even if you do get one, and postural variety, as I said, is key, right? But it's not appropriate for everybody. And you have to treat it on a case-by-case basis. If somebody already has a condition, osteoarthritis, for example, probably wouldn't be a great idea to stand all day, right? So always treat it as a case-by-case type of situation. And there's other conditions, femoral acetabular impingement. For that one, it is recommended that you stand a little bit more. So. Yes.
I'm coming.
We want to talk in the mic so that everybody online can hear you.
Would you recommend the use of a sit-to-stand chair with a sit-to-stand desk if an individual can't stand for as long as the recommendations?
I would prefer that you bring your desk down when you want to be in that seated position. And yeah, I think that's definitely better than having the higher chair.
Oh, we have a question online. What are your thoughts on the use of a footstool with a sit-stand workstations? I've heard that it provides a place for the worker to weight shift while they are standing. Do you know what the current research says? I found that workers get annoyed at having to move the footstool out of the way. What is the current height guidelines for the footrest? That is a multifaceted question.
Yes, I'm actually going to pull this chair ahead just so that I can demonstrate a few things. So most standing chairs, the ones that I've seen anyways, they don't look like this. They don't have the nice padding for the butt or the proper lumbar support. Oftentimes they actually look like this chair. And you can really see here that you wouldn't have adequate lumbar support with this chair. And oftentimes people end up putting their feet on the rail. What's happening here? There's pressure here. There's pressure in that popliteal fold. So there's many reasons why sometimes these chairs are hazardous. However, there are some that are beneficial. So it really depends on what type of equipment we're looking at. Yeah.
The other thing as well is with respect to the footrest is that the standard footrest is basically what we've got. It's the norm. No, it's about 3 inches high. It's angled. And so that just allows you to take the weight. So because when we stand, and most offices do not have under padding in their carpets. It's basically a carpet on top of concrete. And so we're standing there on this floor. Our backs get tired. So as a result, that footrest allows you to put a foot up, transfers the weight from the lower back onto the hips. And you'll see it all the time at grocery stores. You'll see the cashier with their foot up on the little rail at the checkout. And so basically, while you're standing, you should actually be alternating your weight on the footrest. And the standard footrests that are available are preferable. with respect to the fact that the employee finds it annoying to move the footrest. I can say it this nicely or I can say it meanly. I don't know.
Don't sugarcoat it, Trevor.
The nice way of doing it, it's your body, and if you're not going to use the equipment properly, you're going to suffer long-term problems. You need to be responsible for yourself as well. Just because something's inconvenient. Say we had a high decibel desk, but I don't want, so I keep my desk way up high and my chair down. Why? Because I don't want to make that change. Well, you've got the equipment. The equipment's there for a reason, and you also need to take some responsibility for yourself. The employer can provide all the equipment they need, but if it's not going to be utilized properly by that end user, then we're still going to look at the development of long-term musculoskeletal injuries.
Questions?
Not as much a question, but would you recommend then, you were saying these postural cues, so you're standing and you're starting to feel discomfort. Would you just say you're not bound to that 30 to 45 minutes and maybe then that's your body saying, maybe I need to sit down now? I feel like everyone seems to be stuck on, I need to stand 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if you, and it's obvious at first too, you're going to feel a lot more fatigue, and it's just because your muscles aren't necessarily used to standing. I know that I used to sit before I got my workstation. I used to sit all day. And if I would have a social get-together with friends, I would be the first person to sit down. So I think that really demonstrates the weakness in my core musculature, right? So at the beginning, you might get tired quicker, and you do want to listen to your body. But, try to set goals for yourself as well. Don't stand up for 5 minutes and then give up just because you're feeling a little bit tired. But also, you don't have to stick to the 30 to 45 minutes. Some people are going to think that's way too much. So you want to listen to your body as well.